What's going on, my fellow doors? Today we are going over what I use for my scout builds. Now I'm going to say this off the rip. All these builds are just what I use. These are not what I consider... Well, these are what I consider to be the best builds I use. But you can... I just want to say, you can use whatever you want. Any of these guns are good with any overclock and any build. But after saying that, let's get right into this. For the first weapon of Scout, we are using the GK2 with the AI stability engine. When I use this gun, I'm purely bringing it for single target because most overclocks for this gun, you can't do crowd control, so I only ever build it for single target. And let's go over what the overclock does. So AI stability makes you have no recoil and very fast spread recovery, and increases your weak point damage at the cost of lower damage output and slower fire rate. Let's get on to what I use for the tiers. We'll go over this in a second. I use 2-2-2-1-2. Let's talk about that. So this overclock lowers your fire rate. So taking fire rate on tier 1 will help you actually be able to kill stuff with this. Because if you don't have a lot of fire rate with this, let's actually look at it. So with the build right now, you have 9 fire rate. If we take off both fire rate upgrades, you'll only have 6. That is painfully slow. But if you take both fire rate upgrades, it'll boost you up to 9, and it'll make it tolerable. But I take fire rate in this. Reload is a good alternative if you want extra reload. And there's no point of taking the accuracy upgrade. This gun, with AI stability, you won't have any accuracy problems. And let's go down to tier 2. I prefer ammo because the gun doesn't feel like it has that much ammo. And with this overclock, you have a lot of weak point damage. So you don't need a lot of actual damage. Just because when you're hitting weak points, you will hit like a truck. So I prefer ammo. But if you want to make this hit even harder, then take that damage upgrade. Because that will bring you up to 18 damage. And you do 70% weak point damage with this build. But to be able to actually sustain this gun longer, I prefer ammo. Tier 3 kind of explains itself. I take the magazine size because there's no reason to have recoil control. This overclock already helps you with that. So magazine size just helps the gun overall. And on tier 4, I take the hollow point bullets for the weak point bonus. And I take that just because it matches up with the overclock. And in my opinion, there is no reason to use armor breaking. Because you will never, with this overclock, you won't be shooting armor. You want to try your best to shoot weak points. And on to tier 5. These are mostly completely up to you. I wouldn't use Battle Frenzy because you don't need the accuracy that comes from it. Movement speed is lovely if you need some help with movement. But with the accuracy, it's not going to help with AI stability. And I prefer to take fire rate. Because like I said, without the fire rate upgrade, you'll be down to 6. And this one gives 2. But in exchange for fire rate, you can take stun. This one's up to you. The gun already has stun on its own. This one just makes it higher. But I prefer fire rate. That goes over the GK2. This build was meant for single target. Now let's go over to the M1 Classic. For this, I use Hipster. Now this build was given to me by one of the old guys I played with. I did not use the M1000 for the longest time because I did not think it was a good gun. But with this build a dude gave me a long time ago, I find it to be fantastic. I use this for everything. Now let's go over it. Hipster makes your weapon, your spread recovery faster, and it gives you a lot more ammo at the cost of a little bit of damage. Now let's go over the tiers. I use for this build 2-3-2-1-1. Let's talk about that. On tier 1, since the overclock lowers your damage, I prefer taking the damage upgrade. It is 10 damage compared to 38. Now, tier 1 is completely up to you. If you take ammo, it'll give you 77 bullets. but I prefer damage because it helps kill smaller enemies and it will cost you less rounds, and it'll help you against big enemies. When using this, I only use charge shots either when I'm on the last bullet of the magazine, or well, with this gun, on the last clip, on the last shot on the clip, I will use one shot, and I use that as a charge shot because it doesn't take any extra ammo. But for the most times, you only use charge shot to stun an enemy, and we'll talk about that later. On tier 2, I take armor breaking. This is one of the only times I would suggest taking armor breaking, because most times you don't shoot with scout. You mostly want to shoot weak points. But with this build, I'm just spamming the weapon. Not really caring about what I'm spamming it. I'm just shooting for the fun of it. You can take whichever one of these you want. If you're having problems with recoil and accuracy, you can take the recoil and that'll help a bit. But with the way Hipster works, your accuracy and recoil will be pretty tight. And charge shot, like I said, I'm not doing charge shots a lot, so I prefer armor breaking on this. Let's go into tier 3. Tier 3 is really up to you. Like I said, for this build, it's mostly meant for tap firing, and you'll just be shooting the gun normally rather than doing charge shots. So I prefer magazine size. But if you do every now and then put in a few occasional charge shots, it's nice to have a little bit more damage, so you can take focus shot damage. That will help out with that. But like I said, the only reason for this build to use charge shot is just to stun an enemy. Now let's go to tier 4. Tier 4 entirely depends on what mission you're bringing this for. This weapon can be used for crowd control and single target. If you're bringing it to deal with crowd control, you want to bring blow through. You'll pierce 3 enemies, and obviously doing 48 damage with that. So this will help with crowd control. If you are bringing this for dreadnoughts, or specifically killing big enemies, then take the weak point upgrade. That will help you deal with bigger enemies. But I personally always bring this with blow through. Both blow through is reliable, and it helps deal with many things. Now let's talk about tier 5. Tier 5, I almost exclusively run the stun upgrade almost on every build with this gun. This will let your focus shots will stun a target guaranteed. It is a 100% chance to stun a target when you use a focus shot. So the main reason I use this is for many things. If you're using it with blow through, you can stun 3 enemies in a row. If you're having Praetorians come up to you and use their spray attack, or like in the radiation zone, use their radiation attack, you can stop them immediately from doing that. Or maybe against flying enemies, Tri-Jaws and normal mag terror, they hit like a truck, and using stun will make them stop, and most times one-shot them depending on the difficulty. Because focus shot is pretty strong. Now, I never really use fear. I don't think this is a good gun for using fear. And quick reload is actually really good with Hipster, because you'll be tap firing as fast as you want to against crowds. So killing machine will really help with reloading. So if you don't want stun, I would take killing machine for the reload speed. But I stick with stun almost no matter what. But this covers the M1000. Now let's talk about the Plasma Carbine. The both guns before were... The GK2 was mostly for single target. The M1000 was a mix. The way I bring the Plasma Carbine, though, is purely for crowd control. Now let's talk about that. We are using the aggressive venting overclock, the clean overclock. This, to me, is, for crowd control, the most ammo efficient build you're going to get for Scout. Compared to his other 2 guns, or his other 2 primaries, this one helps with crowd control a lot. Let's talk about this. Aggressive venting has a burn AoE on overheat, and you recover from overheating quicker. So, with this gun, it's similar to the minigun's aggressive venting. When you overheat with the Plasma Carbine, you will burn and fear anything in, I think, about a 5 meter radius. It's smaller than the miniguns, but your scout, you'll be able to get around. Now let's talk about what tier upgrades I use. For this build, I use 1, 1, 3, 2, 1. Now let's talk about this. We'll talk about tier 4 because that one's really up to you. Now for this build, you don't want to take any cooling on the gun because you just want to overheat as fast as possible. So I take extra fire rate. In turn, 1, making you shoot faster, and 2, will make you overheat faster because of how fast you're shooting. Now, if you have a problem with projectile speed, you could take that, and it'll help you hit stuff for long range. But I don't use this gun for long range. It's just for crowd control, so you'll play up close and personal with it. Tier 2, this gun is not meant, or this build is not meant for doing single target damage, so I just take ammo. Because that will help you sustain this and be able to use it really well in crowd scenario. And you'll get back more ammo. For tier 3, you almost always want to use hot feet for the movement speed. With this overclock, you'll be overheating to do your damage. You won't really be mostly focusing shooting an enemy. You'll shoot an enemy to overheat, but you're just, for crowd control, overheating. When you use this as a scout, using hot feet will make it to where if you overheat, you will gain a movement speed. So the playstyle I do with this is you go into a crowd, overheat your gun, and run away. Just get out of there as soon as possible so you don't get hurt. This makes it to where your damage is almost free. You can go in, damage enemies, and run away scot-free. And for everything else on that tier, you don't want cooling because you just want to overheat. And if you're having problems with accuracy with the gun, you can take the accuracy upgrade and make your spread tighter. But I don't think it's that inaccurate. I think for what I'm using it for, that's not the biggest deal. Hot feet would just help you move around in those scenarios. And now we come down to tier 4. I'm just flat out gonna say I completely ignore armor breaking for this gun. This is not the greatest gun for doing armor breaking. And even with this, I don't really care about shooting armor. Now for the other 2 upgrades, these are really good depending on what you want to use it for. I take Plasma Splash because I'm not looking to do damage with the shots, I'm just looking to overheat. Plasma Splash guarantees 5 damage to ignore armor and helps me with a little bit of crowd control when enemies are stacking up. This is no way, in my opinion, the best upgrade, but for this build, because the way I use the gun, this will just make it to where if I'm fighting a Praetorian, the way I use this build is if you have a group of enemies, I try and focus the enemy that has the biggest HP pool and let them surround me. And I'll shoot the guy with the biggest HP pool, and Plasma Splash will let you ignore armor. Instead of breaking armor, you'll ignore armor with that 5 splash damage. Back to the explanation. With this build, you want to shoot the biggest target and let the smaller stuff surround you. And then when you overheat, they'll get set on fire and feared. But if you do want to do a bit more damage to whatever big targets you're trying to shoot, or if you're not using this, and if you're not surrounded, you can take Overcharge PCF. This will give you the chance to electrify a target on hit, and this will increase your overall damage. It doesn't play an effect on aggressive venting, but for just shooting the gun normally, if you want damage, take Overcharge. Now for tier 5. This one, tier 5 is almost up to how you want to play. I've been testing out manual heat dump, and manual heat dump does what it says. It will let you overheat your gun at any moment past 50%. So when you get your gun past 50% heat, you're able to overheat it manually by clicking X. This helps a lot with the build, because otherwise, if you want to overheat the gun, you have to keep shooting. Most scenarios that are in between hordes, and you're not always fighting a ton of enemies, manual heat dump will let you overheat and still gain damage. Now let me say this though. With aggressive venting, your damage is based off of how hot your gun is when overheating. If you use manual heat dump, anywhere but 80, 90 to 99% heat, you will lose damage on your area effect. But it is really nice when coming towards, if you're having to deal with a load of swarmers, shockers, or just a bunch of grunts, or just a small amount of them. You can shoot a couple bullets, overheat, and you'll save ammo. This does help save ammo, because otherwise you'd have to fully overheat the gun, wasting ammo. But, not to say, thermal feedback loop helps a lot too. Because other than manually heat dumping, if you always want the highest amount of damage, but you don't want to use manual heat dump, thermal feedback loop will help a lot with this. Because this will make it the second you get past 50% heat, you will shoot faster, meaning you overheat sooner. So this will help against big crowds, or you're trying to get your damage out quicker. This will help you reach the maximum damage you can get sooner with this. But these two, completely up to you. I've been using either one, because both of them are really good. Manual heat dump is really good if you prefer overheating on your mark. But if you know how to control it better without having to use manual heat dump, thermal feedback loop is really good. And always remember, if you don't want to use either one of these, you can just completely unequip it. Neither one of these makes a big difference in a build, and sometimes you don't want either one of them. So remember, you can always unequip upgrades. But that covers all the primaries for Scout. Let's talk about the ones I use for his secondary. For the secondary, the jerry-rigged boomstick. I built this for damage. The overclock we use for it is called Jumbo Shells. It is a huge increase in damage at the cost of ammo and a longer reload time. Let's talk about the tiers. For this, I use 1-1, 3, 1-1. And let's get into it. Tier 1, this gun doesn't, with this overclock, this gun doesn't come with a lot of ammo. Now, building for full damage, you would think I would take the damage upgrade, but in doing so, you only get 14 extra shots. Ammo will make it to where you have 22. But if you really do want to build this, like hitting something with a truck, take damage. But I prefer ammo because that'll help you overall do more damage than just taking actual damage. In tier 2, I don't even have to explain this one. There was another YouTuber who went into detail about the boomstick. And just to say, you should almost never take a quick-fire ejector, the reload speed upgrade, because with the boomstick, your reload speed is not based on your actual reload speed. It is for some reason based on your fire rate. And also with this gun, fire rate helps it too, because using jumbo shells, it is just meant for single target or, like I'll see later, splash damage. But with this will help you get both shots out instantly and help you go ahead and start reloading. And on to tier 3. I didn't go much into detail about that. There's another guy on YouTube who went over the tier 2 upgrades. And for every build, double trigger is always better. But let's go on to tier 3. I take, this is where your damage is going to come from with this weapon, is your pellets. Now, I take high capacity shells, the pellet counts. That will increase your pellet count from 8 to 11, meaning more damage. If you do this with the build we have currently, this will bring your damage per shot to 220. But with both shots, you'll do 440 with both shots, 220 per shot. If you hit all the pellets, that is. But if you want to keep high damage, but you want some more ammo, take the ammo upgrade. I don't normally take the stun, but if you take stun with blow through, you can completely stun a horde within 1 or 2 shots guaranteed. But I built this for full damage, and that's where the pellet count comes in handy. And let's talk about tier 4. Tier 4, for most guns, I never bring armor breaking. And that's to say with this one, I do not bring armor breaking. And for the other upgrade, the shockwave damage, I don't build this for this because I am playing this up close, but not that close. I prefer blow-through rounds because this will let each of your pellets pierce 3 targets. Overall, that means you can use this gun for crowd control now, and you're able to use it against big targets. The way I like to play this is, 1, just go up behind a big enemy and blast them, but in doing so, you can loop smaller enemies close to that big target, hit the big target, and all your pellets will hit the smaller ones. Or, if you're just fighting a crowd of small enemies or grunts, it will help you clear them. This does so much damage, you'll usually one-shot an entire crowd. If not, the second shot is a guaranteed kill. Tier 5, I'm not gonna lie, most of these I don't really care about. Fear, I don't like fear on the shotgun, because I don't want them running away after my first shot. And the White Phosphorus rounds is really good with this build, because with how much damage you do, you're guaranteed to ignite everything on fire. Even big targets like oppressors, you will probably ignite them on fire within 2 shots. Because of how much damage you do with this is really good to take. The only reason I take auto reload is because I auto reload. But normally I do take the fire upgrade, because if you take White Phosphorus rounds with blow through, this makes it really good at single target. It just makes it better at crowd control, meaning an entire horde of enemies you'll catch on fire, or a big enemy you'll guaranteed catch on fire. So White Phosphorus rounds is what I will normally take on this. I didn't have it on because I was using auto reload for something else, but White Phosphorus rounds, amazing. Also, the main reason I don't prefer auto reload is I normally reload my guns. But that covers the boomstick. Let's move on to the Zukovs. For this, I build it for single target with the embedded detonators. There's no words to say about this. This is just a fantastic overclock. You can never go wrong with it. If you need to do anything, or you just need single target, embedded detonators is here for you. Now let's go over it. The overclock, micro explosives triggered inside an enemy on reload, causing massive damage. So when you hit enemies in their fleshy parts or anything that's not armored, you will put a mine in them that explodes, and that damage is 48 damage per mine. That is a lot of damage. Now let's go over what I use for the tier upgrades. I use 1, 1, 2, 3, 2. Now let's talk about that. For this build, you're not looking to do damage, so to say, with the bullets. You're looking to do damage with the mines, meaning I take ammo. Because I'm not looking to do damage with the actual bullets, just trying to shoot them. So ammo will help you sustain this overclock. Tier 2 is really kind of up to you. For actual more damage or if you want higher DPS with this, you can take fire rate. If you think you reload too slow, take reload speed. I prefer the magazine upgrade because I prefer having to be able to shoot 40 rounds into one enemy before having to reload. So in one big enemy, you can usually take them out in one go. But if you want to shoot faster, that'll help you dish out that damage quicker and then get to reloading. For tier 3, I take the accuracy. This one's really up to you, because there's really no downset into either one of these. I prefer accuracy, so I make sure I hit my target, because these two guns aren't the most accurate for long range. So the accuracy upgrade will help you with a bit of everything. It'll help you hit your shot for long range and medium range. But if you have no problem with the accuracy or spread, take the damage upgrade. That'll help overall. Now, tier 4 is an interesting one. I take ammo just because for this weapon, all I want to do is have a lot of ammo. I'm not looking to do damage with the bullets. I'm just looking for ammo and to reload with embedded detonators. So I would not take hollow point bullets. It won't do much because how little your damage is, and it doesn't affect the minelets you put in enemies. But to say, blow through is actually really good with this. This is up to you. When using blow through with embedded detonators, if you're hitting more than one target, you will actually put a mine in both targets. Meaning, instead of hitting one enemy with a mine, you hit 2 enemies. So this is really good when it comes to crowd control, because that means you can deal with crowds a bit easier. But like I said, I mostly bring this for single target. But that is really good. But if you're just bringing it to deal with single targets, just bring ammo. And if you are looking to deal with crowds, grunts don't have that much HP. So normally 1 to 2 shots in a bunch of enemies and then reload, it'll take out the whole crowd easily. On to tier 5. I almost exclusively take get in and get out for every build. And this will give you bonus movement speed when completely emptying a magazine. And that will help you just be able to move around easier. There's no downside to using it, you just move faster. For embedded detonators, I would not use consecutive, is that right? Sorry, no. Conductive bullets, I read it wrong. I wouldn't use conductive bullets because this does not affect embedded detonators. This only affects your normal shots. On other builds, it's really good. For this build, horrible. So get in and get out would be the best for tier 5 in my opinion. But that covers the Zukovs with embedded detonators. Let's move on to the Boltshark, the crossbow. Now, I have fallen in love with this. I've been so addicted to using this, and you might as well. Now let's talk about it. For this build, I bring Bakken bolts. This makes your bolts penetrate and ricochet off enemies. At the cost of that, you deal a little less damage, and the reload's a little longer. But one thing I have to say that I have found when using Bakken bolts is with the crossbow, you're able to pick up any arrows that miss. With Bakken bolts, I have found sometimes when it penetrates and bounces off enemies, and if it tends to hit a surface, sometimes you're able to retrieve that bolt even though it hit an enemy. I'm just throwing that out there because I've just noticed that to be an amazing quality of using it. But let's go on to the actual build. For this, I use 1-1-1-1-2. Let's talk about it. So, tier 1 is really up to you. But with this build, if you're going for full damage and you want to sustain more damage for a crowd control's sake, take bolt tasers. Those will help you do more damage and combo well with the tier 5 upgrade we have on here. But I normally prefer pheromone bolts just because I don't use pheromone grenades, and pheromone bolts gives you space. If you need time to revive someone, if you need enemies to get off of you, or just for being what Scout mostly does, support, you can just target a big enemy and it'll help keep them off of you and help you line up shots to use Bakken bolts to deal with crowds. Now let's go on to tier 2. Tier 2 is almost up to you, but with this build you're mostly using normal bolts. So having extra ammo for your special bolts doesn't really matter to me much. But extra ammo for your normal bolts is something that can be really good. But for this, the overclock lowers your damage. So I prefer to take extra damage on tier 2. That help bring you back to normal damage. And guaranteed, usually one-shotting most of the small enemies. And it's still doing big damage to the bigger enemies. Now for tier 3, I take reload speed. Because this overclock lowers your reload speed. Because right now, it is 1.8, but without it, it'll be 2.4 seconds. So, it's not the biggest change, but it'll help. If you're having problems with longer range, you can take projectile speed. But I prefer reload. Now let's go on to tier 4. This one's also a bit up to you. I prefer Battle Frenzy because with Bakken bolts, you're mostly guaranteed to kill some of the smaller enemies. And in doing so, you'll gain a movement speed for doing it. You can take radio transmitter if you want, but most times, you're a scout, you can go retrieve the arrows you miss. So this isn't really the best. I prefer movement speed, because that'll just help you overall. Now let's go for tier 5. This is where I was talking about earlier. I take magnetic shafts. This will This overclock is amazing for many ways. This will make your arrows specifically focus enemies that are electrocuted and do more damage to electrocuted enemies. And right now, I don't know if they fixed it, but for this recording, I'm pretty sure they have not. With magnetic shafts, your damage is also based on your velocity. So, if you want to do the highest damage possible with magnetic shafts, and this applies to almost every build that I've seen for the Boltshark, take the velocity upgrade or the projectile speed on tier 3 with this, and that will help with damage. And when using blocking bolts, this is where I said on tier 1, it is completely up to you. Magnetic shafts makes you do more damage to electrified targets. So if you want to be really consistently having a lot of damage and doing even more crowd control, take the taser bolts. This will make the crossbow extremely good for crowd control, and that'll make it to where your primary can be just for single target. Now I don't take duration on the special bolts, because for this you want magnetic shafts, because that will help you do damage, and that will replace the damage that's lost with blocking bolts. But you can take duration if you want. It will help out with your special bolts. And fear, I've never cared for fear for this. I honestly don't ever use it. So this is just between these two upgrades right here. But I almost always for this build use magnetic shafts. But that covers the Boltshark. I hope that helped out. Boltshark is a really confusing weapon, but it is all up to you on how you want to play it. And, just like I did in the last video, I'm going to go over just what I use for the other stuff for Scout. For most of my builds, for the grenade, if you want one of the most reliable grenades that you can never go wrong with, take the IFGs. This grenade doesn't only help you, it helps your teammates. And with the build I was just talking about, this counts as an electrical field. So if you have anything that does bonus damage towards electricity, IFGs will be an electrical field that you do even more damage in. On top of that, IFGs lower movement speed by 75% when an enemy is in it. On top of that, it weakens enemies by 30%. A lot of people don't remember that about the IFG. You will do 30% more damage to anything in this. So this is amazing if you're dealing with crowd control, a bunch of enemies are swarming you. IFGs will slow them and give you the opportunity to kill them. On top of that, if you're with a team, this will just overall help the team. And crowd grenades, I use these every now and then. It just depends on what you want. Now, none of these grenades are the best or worst, just scenario based. I always use IFGs. But that's what I like to use. You can use whatever. If you're doing an electrical based build too, you can use boomerangs, they'll help with that. If you're doing a temp shock build, cryo grenades are really great for that. And pheromones are really good for creating space for your team. I don't think I need to go over the armor. I will still show it, but I'm pretty sure I went over the armor in the last setup video, because I use the same armor set for everyone. For Scout's flare gun, I just take pure ammo and magazine size. And for his grapple hook, this is something interesting. I personally take full recharge. So I want the gun recharging as soon as possible. So I take 1, 1, 2, 3. So recharge, range, movement speed. This will make it to where if you grapple onto something, the rate that it pulls you is faster. I prefer that over the projectile speed. Or is this wind up time? Yeah, this is projectile speed. I don't really like that. I prefer it pulling me in faster. Now on tier 4, this one is completely up to you and how experienced you are using it. I take recharge speed because I want it recharging as soon as possible. But if you have a bad problem taking fall damage or are newer to Scout, take safety first. This will make it to where if you grapple and you let go of your grappling hook, you will have a fall damage reduction for a short time after releasing it, meaning when you take fall damage after releasing your grapple gun, it won't be nearly as bad. So this will help you get used to Scout. Or if you're like me and you've gotten used to it and you don't take fall damage as frequently, take movement speed. This will give you movement speed after grappling. So this will help you just get around quicker. But I prefer charge speed just so I can use it more frequently. But that covers about everything. I'll take a look at my pickaxe, but that covers about everything for Scout. And you can mix up these builds however you want. Since I didn't really show that, I will just quickly, right here in the top left, you can see how I do the setups. For pure crowd control, you can already see what the setup is. Aggressive venting of plasma carbine and Balkan bolts for the Boltshark. If you want a mixed build, you can do AI stability for the GK2 mixed with Balkan bolts. That will be single target for your primary, crowd control for your secondary. Same thing goes for the M1000. M1000 can be mixed for single target and use this for secondary. But if you want to do crowd control for your primary, you can bring jumbo shells on the secondary. That'll help you do crowd control with your primary, single target for your secondary. Or if you want pure single target, you can take jumbo shells with AI stability. Huge amount of single target, great for dreadnoughts. Or pure single target again with embedded detonators and AI stability. You can mix match these however you want. M1000 with the embedded detonators and hipster. That is my normal build for a bit of everything, combined with the IFGs. But just figured I'd show a little bit of a mix of what I use. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope going over this and showing you what I personally use for Has 5 missions, Has 4, Has 3, all that good stuff. I hope these builds helped you in some way. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have enjoyed it, please like it. If you did not find any of this helpful or you've just disliked the video, please do dislike it. And if you have any questions about these builds or need any other help, comment down below and I will reply to you. But thank you so much for watching. Please have a good day and night.